welcome. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. And thanks for having me on, and to all your viewers, your audience. Hey, I hope everybody's doing well.
I hope so as well. Well, guys, we are in for a treat today. We have the author, I have to say, the author, Andrew Snorton, on with us today. But not only is he an author, he is a host, he is an advocate, he is a former teacher. I just found that out. He has so many hats that he wears. And so I can't wait for you to find out about him and to get to know him a little bit so that you can support our first male author guest. Andrew, you're the first male author guest.
Wow, I am sincerely grateful and humbled. And I just want to say thank you for providing the opportunity. Seriously, thank you.
It is my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So I could introduce you forever, but I like to introduce by getting to know someone. Like, tell me a little bit about where you're from, okay? Because I'm representing Chi-Town all the time. So where are you from, Andrew?
Okay. Officially, I am from the state of Illinois. I actually grew up in Bloomington, Illinois for about the first 3 years of living. So I'm officially an Illinois native, but I really consider New Jersey home. That's where I did elementary, middle, high school. The area where I went to high school, Ocean Township, Asbury Park, sits right on the Atlantic Ocean, maybe about 40 miles south of New York City, a little bit over an hour away from Philadelphia. Collegiately attended Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Was very fortunate to get engaged and involved not only on campus, but in the greater Winston-Salem community. Since then, I've pretty much been a resident of the Metro Atlanta area. And before getting to this point, some of the previous background I have is in the corporate sector, where I used to work in the insurance industry. I then pivoted to education, where I taught middle school. So I taught language arts, social studies, journalism, and for a little bit, I did drama and theater arts. When I transitioned out, I did a lot of grant writing with the nonprofit me and my colleagues established called the LEAD Foundation, where we work mainly with middle and high school students. And now, under my business, Creative Community Solutions, I have a writing branch where I've written 3 books, recorded 4 audiobooks, and I've actually edited a couple of other authors' books. Then on the press and media end, in partnership with Status Network, one of the Atlanta media groups, I have my own full broadcast show, The Conversation Corner, every second and fourth Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central. And I actually handle press and media for a couple of different entities, from a fashion designer, 1820 Hats, to a semi-pro basketball team, the Georgia Spartans, and a women's magazine, Real Women of Atlanta. And then I still keep my ties on the education end, where I do the traditional tutoring, virtual tutoring, ACT and SAT prep. So yeah, that's kind of where it started and where it is.
Gosh. Starting in Illinois, New Jersey, Atlanta, and all of those different hats. Like, that was so many different hats, and you do them all very well. I love what you do for other authors, how you support us and promote, as well as, promoting your own causes. And I also saw in your little bio that you had a poetry club at one point. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Actually, when I taught middle school, I had a poetry club that we established called the Lyricist Lounge. And I'll admit, we kind of borrowed the title off the Lyricist Lounge compilation hip hop albums. But poetry to me is one of the easiest forms of writing, but it's arguably one of the most powerful forms of writing, because it really is about expression and articulation and capturing what's going on at a moment, and your thoughts, your ideas, your hopes and fears. And for middle schoolers to help find their voice, and we know how turbulent a time that can be. But not only at that, you think about poetry big picture, it is a way for people to find their voice. And whether you use the formal or informal, free verse, blank verse, no verse, whatever, it is a way to articulate and express and capture and find your voice. And to varying degrees, when you find your voice, you're helping other people who have it here, but might be hesitant putting it here or on paper or tablet to help. So very, very powerful medium.
Absolutely. And it ended up being your first book, right? You took your own poetry, and then that's kind of how you made your debut, right? Through poetry.
Yeah, so my debut, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. The backstory on the title is in the spring of 2014, most people remember the late Dr. Maya Angelou when she passed, and she was actually a professor where I went to college, Wake Forest University, for about 30 plus years. And I got invited to the actual ceremonies, the same ceremony where First Lady Michelle Obama, the late Cicely Tyson, Oprah Winfrey, all those people spoke. And when I got my invite, it was the name of Joseph instead of Andrew. So me being the youngest and probably the goofiest of the two of us, I was asking my parents if there was something they wanted to tell me. And I'm not going to repeat every word that they said, but you can use your imagination. But I ended up tracking down a distant relative called Joseph. So the book is based on our actual conversation. But what I did a little different from most poetry is the beginning of each chapter is a portion of that talk. So the reader knows the context. When they get into the poem, they can connect with the writer a lot better versus sometimes the writer has this lofty goal and the reader might not be able to connect with it. So to minimize that disconnect, that's how I set that first book up. So yeah, my first book was poetry looking at the action of love through broader lenses from family, community, people in your life, people no longer in your life, self-realization, and one of those spiritual walks and talks. So that's pretty much how that first book went.
That is wonderful. I love the topic of love and the fact that you could find a relative so late in life, but then connect and then the story just bloom from there. That is so beautiful in itself. That's poetic. So that is really wonderful. Your second book was about faith. So I know that means a lot to you. That's something that seems to drive you a little bit for sure. So could you tell us about that project?
Yeah, sure. So 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1 is my second book. And the motivation behind it really came behind having a better interfaith talk because unfortunately, I'll just be blunt, there are some people who feel that non-Christian faiths, there's something fundamentally wrong. Now, I'm not going to say what's right or what's wrong, but I think we had to have a better interfaith conversation. So the people I interviewed are of Christianity, Hinduism, and Islamic background. The second thing is the concept of all of us are dealing with something, but some people are dealing with something each and every day. So when people are going through their struggles before they decide to go ham or do something really detrimental to themselves or other people, it's like, let's pause and take inventory of what people are living with. And actually, one of the people I interviewed is from Chicago. But people opened up about the physical health challenges that they're living with, mental health challenges that they're living with. The person who I interviewed talking about life after being incarcerated for 10 years is actually my second cousin. But they talked about not only through the lens of their respective faith, but best and better practices in health and wellness, the incorporation of a real solid support network, and just kind of pivoting their way of thinking, what they're able to do to keep all that in perspective. So by looking at it through those two lenses is having those stronger conversations, not only within and across faith, but again, helping people get perspective when they feel like everything is falling apart. And before they do something drastic where they put themselves in a deeper hole, let's look at how a person navigates through living with multiple sclerosis, or how they navigate through living with bipolar disorder, where they tried to kill themselves multiple times before they got a proper diagnosis. And you never know what advocates can come from this intersection. And I opened up the book with the Islamic greeting, wassalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam, which means peace unto you and peace back. It doesn't mean you're going to see me on the corner selling bean pies, but when people are extending tidings of peace and acknowledging your existence and your humanity, and when you think about sometimes in Christian faith where they do expressions of fellowship and friendship, you're doing the exact same thing. You're just doing it a little bit differently. So if we look at what brings us together, yes, you never know where that can be a stronger advocacy for, let's say, gender related issues or access related, business, whatever. You never know from whence your help is going to come from. So don't be so dismissive until you get a better point of reference.
I love it. I love it. I love the connectivity. And you're basically showing that we are all in this together. We may look at things from different vantage points, but there is a connection. As you said, we're all going through something, especially within this last year when there's been a lot of troubles. I can see a book like this really being impactful and really helping people to kind of deal with these different tragedies and trials that we've had over the last year. So what a wonderful read, I'm sure. I am also interested, before we get to the last book, of course, we're going to get to that. Because of course your multiple books have been published by you, so that's impressive in itself. But I want to get to know you a little bit more, because people are tuning in because it's not about me, it's about learning about you. So let's think of something, maybe not book related for a minute. Tell me about, your favorite meal. Like what is you as an author, what are you like when it's getting that good food? What are you eating before that book's signing?
That is a great question. Actually, I'll say salmon is like one of my favorite meals. And in fact, I thank God for the creation of an air fryer. So like my sister and brother-in-law got me one for my birthday. And I'll admit it sat in the box for a couple months because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. But I would say I'll give a little bit away. Salmon with a little bit of seasonings, and you use whatever libation you're a fan of. A hint Jim Beam is pretty good. A couple other things, and let it marinate. Put it in there for like $3.95 for like 15, 16 minutes. So it's flaky and everything sinks in. But salmon is definitely a favorite. I guess food wise, I'm more chicken, fish. I'll eat beef occasionally. I've kind of cut out the pork. I'll admit during this pandemic, I ate a lot more salads because your green vegetables are water based. So you're getting extra water. We don't feel like, chugging it down. Dessert. Oh my gosh. I'll say apple pie, blackberry cobbler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I
unusual one. I don't hear that often. Look, the audience didn't know they were going to get recipes. They were like, you told them how to make the salmon. You're like, you have a whole dessert, probably a nice beverage with that. I mean, you're really letting us inside the mind.
You know what? I'm just taking full creative license, as most authors do. But the blackberry cobbler idea is really from my dad. My dad, part of what he did to pay his way through school was just like, if you go to like Waffle House or whatever, like a short order chef or diner, that's what he did. And he would experiment with different stuff. And I'm not the gravy person like he is, but like cobblers and things along those lines, like, and out, like hot blackberry cobbler, little scoop of ice cream, man, it's a wrap. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Well, it sounds delicious. You had me at salmon, and it was flaky, so we're good.
Hey, come on through. You're good.
Okay, so that's your great meal. And I'm sure, you have some places that you like to travel to. You take us to different places through the books, right? But where's your places? Where can we find author Andrew Snorton?
Okay.
Besides Illinois, New Jersey, and Atlanta.
Okay. Outside of those areas, I'd say definitely when I go back to North Carolina, that's a favorite spot. Any of the areas outside of Winston-Salem, a lot of people don't realize the state of North Carolina has a big wine culture. There's probably about 130 or so registered wineries, and a number of them are within about a 15 to 20-minute drive of Winston-Salem. So wineries you want to take down would be Hanover Park, another one, Ray Lynn Winery, and gosh, I should know because I did a book signing there. They're going to kill me next time they see me. But another great spot in Winston-Salem, if you ever go, Carolina's Vineyard and Hops. Every Saturday evening, they do like live jazz, R&B. And what I like about them for the 21 and older audience, I think they still have it. You can get like an actual swipe card, almost like your MTA card in Chicago, and you put your value on it. And let's say you want to get a sample of Chardonnay, you swipe your card, you put your glass under, you push the button, and it'll do a pour of whatever, a sample, half glass or full glass. Like you can still order whatever, but for people that want a sample, you prepay and then you just swipe and you go ahead and self-serve. I don't know how well that would fly over in bigger cities like Atlanta, but or Chicago or whatever.
Or Chicago, right?
Yeah, but it works. And another neat thing about the state of North Carolina, depending on where you are, like in the research triangle, like Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, the Triad, which is the area where I went to school, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, great dining, deceptively good dining. And for people who are fans of the microbrew culture, especially in Raleigh, it is really, really big. But yeah, I won't give away where in Chicago. I know I'm overdue for a visit, but I have a couple hideouts in Chicago that we'll get into that another day. But you said the non-Chicago, non-Atlanta, non-Jersey.
Yeah. Yes, I
Stuff.
just want to see where else you would be traveling to. I know you've traveled to many places for book signings and for, different events that you've been involved with. I just wonder what was your favorite. It looked like you were going to say something.
I was about to say a favorite spot of mine in Jackson, Mississippi, when I did the Mississippi Book Festival, Johnny T's Bistro and Blues. That is a must go. The building is historic because you know how things used to be something else. Well, Johnny T's used to be the venue where a lot of your Black entertainers went. So like James Brown played there, Red Fox played there. Performed there. So Johnny T's Bistro and Blues they actually hosted a book signing for me in 2017, my first year of writing. And we did that the day before I did the Mississippi Book Festival. And I did a similar event there in 2018, but great ownership, great food, great live music. It's one of the spots, if your travels ever take you there, dining wise, that is a must go. Like, you have to go there, seriously.
Little Johnny T Bistros in my life, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Sounds excellent. Okay, so you mentioned music. So of course, as a writer, I'm wondering, is music part of your writing process at all, or how important or integral is it?
Music helps. I think for me, I try to listen to non-instrumental music when I'm writing, when I incorporate it, because sometimes the vocals sometimes can throw me off. So any type of like jazz or even like hip hop instrumentals, things along those lines, it's one of those, like, writing sometimes is a rhythm and flow in and of itself. And when you catch a beat or whatever, sometimes that opens up the door. So I don't incorporate music all the time, but I definitely do. And like I said, I try to do more. If I'm writing a book, it's going to be more instrumental. If I'm writing something else, I can listen to just about anything. I guess music genres, like I said, instrumental be jazz and hip hop, and just in general, hip hop, R&B, jazz,
Love it.
a little bit of rock, like from Jimi Hendrix to whatever. So a little bit of reggae, obviously Marley. It just depends on what you need to give you that nudge. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think with writing, you might have a preferred way of doing things, but you always look for ways that kind of expand your boundaries. So if you're expanding your boundaries stylistically, what you're doing, like, structure wise or topic wise, feel free to expand in regards to different songs to get the juices flowing, basically.
Okay, so different songs might inspire different things, right? And I can see that working for you because you've had different genres of writing that you've done. You've had poetry, nonfiction, so maybe they were inspired by different things. I get that. That could make sense for some people out there. In addition to the music tips that you just gave us, and then the food tips, if there are any like aspiring writers out there, or they may really be thinking, I want to be published, not that you're just published because you're, list the list: author, host, speaker, teacher, advisor. But if they want to just kind of get out there, what have you learned in these almost 4 years as a published author that you feel is a takeaway? If there's one thing that you would want to tell that aspiring author out there, what would it be?
I'd say the number one thing is just get started. That's the number one thing, because everybody out there has these great ideas, but if you don't get the process started, all this other stuff doesn't mean anything. And the second thing that I'll say is just build up the habit of writing that works for you. Like, consistency looks different to different people, but what I'll always tell anyone, think about whatever task or whatever accomplishment you had, whether it was fitness related or learning a new skill or whatever, and ask yourself, what level of consistency did you have in order to achieve, that particular goal? Use that as a starting point. So there's no like, well, you can't. How are you going to be that restrictive when the whole point of writing is finding your creative voice, finding your authenticity, speaking with an audience. So the two biggest things: get started and figure out what that habit looks like for you. And then the things are going to evolve and you can figure out the rest, like structure wise, or who you're going to use to publish and all that type of thing. But if you never get started, all that stuff doesn't really matter.
There are so many people who have scraps of paper and ideas. So that is awesome advice, because getting started is, you know, even if you're doing a page a day or a page a week, just get started. I love that. That is so true. Because you're right. How can you get to all those other levels if you don't begin? So along this journey, what are you most proud of? What are you most proud of?
Gosh, I think the biggest thing I'm proud of is getting started. Because
You
no, I
followed
mean,
your own advice.
no, I'm so serious. Like, on one hand, I wish I got started sooner, but on the other hand, I got started when I was supposed to, because I might not have experienced the growth or the opportunities had I done it when I was younger. I might not have been mature enough when I was younger, just being point blank. But I look at what I've been able to do during these 4 years, and I released my first book in February 2017. I did my first major festival in August. That doesn't always happen 6 months after you publish that you're at a major festival. I've been able to speak at different festivals in Detroit, Michigan, Washington, D.C., Nashville, Tennessee, and I've been in it. This is my 4th year. Yeah. So I'm very thankful and grateful to everybody who has patronized, everyone who's encouraged, everyone that's clicked share, everyone that will send they never comment, but they'll send you a photo. Hey, look at what came in the mail today. All those little things, to take a page out of my own book, you don't know what things mean to somebody else. Even if you would do those things because that's what you normally do, you never know the impact it can have on somebody else and how that might be that motivation when they feel like not doing anything or what have you. So I'm just the most grateful for getting started, the support that I've received thus far, the opportunities that have been presented to me, even though I'm not as knee deep lengthwise, time-wise as other people. And I'm just excited of what's next. Awesome. So you pause and take inventory and you celebrate as well you should, because you know what you had to work through to get there, but you can't stop here. You know that there's more.
Oh, that's a word right there. That just celebrating where you are, enjoying the now. You know what I mean? Just enjoying the moment. You probably had a lot of moments. What would you say has been your most memorable moment so far as an author?
Oh gosh, I'll say this: the most memorable moment. Darn, there's a number. I'll say
that's a good thing.
All right, I'll tell you that. Here's I talked about this earlier. The most memorable moment was a byproduct of me writing. So I did the Detroit Book City Festival, February 2019. So I literally flew up on a Sunday morning, got off the plane, rode straight to the venue with my suitcase and what have you, did everything I needed to do there, then finally checked in. And then the next day I go down to the landing area where the GM building is. I remember it used to be the Renaissance Center. I know I'm dating myself, but I happened to take this picture with the Canadian flag, the city of Windsor in the background. And when I posted it the very next day, a magazine out of Los Angeles connected with me and they asked, could we repost this photo? And of course, I'm not the smartest of the two of us in this conversation, but I made the smart answer and said yes. But from there, I got an interview with their branch in Atlanta, and then I got an interview with their branch in Dallas. Wow. And being able to share your story with people who don't know who you are, that may want to know who you are because of what you're doing, what you've covered, that is probably one of the biggest moments. And then a similar moment was how I actually got my television show. It was because I was a guest on someone else's show talking about the books I had done. This was back in September 2018. And by divine intervention, the network owner and the network top producer were in there. So a couple days later, I get this phone call. I'm like, what are they calling me for? But literally, they pitched me the idea. Yeah, no, but they pitched me the idea of doing a show. And that's how my show got started in October 2018. And when I think about fellow authors I've been able to, talk with on the full broadcast, candidates for US Congress, people in arts and entertainment, to one of the people who I tutored for his ACT. I had him on because he, African-American male, was one of the top swimmers in the state of Georgia. He's now at Howard University, where many people don't realize they're the only HBCU that has a Division I swim program, and he's on it. So because of writing, there have been other opportunities that presented themselves that, quite frankly, I'm not saying they wouldn't have happened, but it might have taken longer. So I would say that, and just people who connect with what you're writing and say this impacted them, or you were able to put into words what they've struggled putting into words. I think those are the most satisfying things with writing. That, and one more true story. Summer of 2018, I did a book signing in Birmingham. I was at the Wine Loft Birmingham in downtown. We had light refreshments and stuff. We had leftovers, and I'll just say divine intervention said, hey, where are the homeless people? So we went to one of the parks, found some homeless folks. And I remember saying, food might not work for your palate, but they stopped me and like, sir, we'll take what you have, because we hadn't eaten in 3 days. Now, you talk about something powerful. If I hadn't written that book, I wouldn't have been there. If I hadn't been there, someone might not have gotten fed. Wow. So we all, as authors, want people to love our work and the sales. I mean, all that's fine and dandy, but there's some deeper meanings why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I hope, as long as I can be as authentic and accessible as possible, people can connect, relate, debate, and discuss, but they feel like they can take away something that is going to help them. So sometimes the purpose sometimes is bigger than the profit. I know that sounds real strange to say, but sometimes really the purpose is bigger than the profit. And if you write,
I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. Yes. And I've seen your interactions, whether you're dealing with one person or many people, you're always authentic, and that definitely serves you well. So that is really, really wonderful. I could see you're about purpose, and many of us should be like that instead of profits. It's about, or how about both?
Well, I mean, all I'm saying is this: there's nothing wrong with that, but I think the operative word is perspective, and I think people can see through when you're writing intentionally versus you're writing for an intention. There's a difference between the two. Just like that old Houdini song, the words, what, love and like are both 4 letters, but they're 2 different things altogether. It's the same thing when people see that you're writing out of purpose. People are going to gravitate. But if you're writing for a purpose, or writing, or that, you just be real with what you're doing, and the support will come, and it'll come in more ways than what you think, and it'll come from unexpected spaces and places.
So speaking of unexpected places and spaces, so I was with you, like the first thing, your first book was about poetry, and it was about love, and I was like, love, and then faith, and then baseball. So tell me about
yeah, exactly.
the third book, baseball.
People are like, he's definitely the youngest of the 2 because he's all over the place. So this is my 3rd book, Nothing Minor, and the inspiration behind it was growing up. I was a big baseball fan growing up. Watched it with my dad. Watched it with my elders. Played it as a kid, and for me, like when you think about the data that they talk about, like averages, that's how I learned how to do decimals and percentages. So it was more than just sports pieces. Obviously, as I got older, my baseball skills diminished, so I had no business being out there on the diamond. But for me, part of the motivation at looking at minor leagues is that, number one, a lot of people don't look at them. And people have to realize minor league baseball is where, in general, your major leaguers, that's where they get their repetitions. That's where they get their preparation, hone their skill sets. And through the lenses of access, because the ballparks are a lot smaller, they're a lot more intimate, the price points are a lot more affordable. They have some of the most ingenious theme nights that you don't always see at a major league ballpark. The players are a lot more accessible, and you're really seeing people develop, and people don't realize you can come straight out of high school and play professionally. So when you see like a major league game and it's a person who's 20, 21, 22, that's because they probably started playing pro ball at like 17 or 18. I was very intentional of interviewing as many African-American players as possible. After like the 80s, the population of Black players diminished to where I think now it's like 7 or 8%. But there are quality players in minor league ball that are working their way up to the major leagues. Being able to get their perspective on not only the game, but some of these guys are they're a lot wiser than what you think. When you can have a 20-year-old giving you perspective about losing, saying you either win or learn a lesson, that's what you expect to hear in your late 30s, early 40s, not at 19 or 20. When you can have someone in their mid 20s talking about filter out the noise, because he knows the chatter that's gone on since he's been drafted, but you can apply that beyond the game. Like any of us who are writing, if we didn't filter out the noise, we would never published. Let's just be that blunt. Or anybody out there beyond writing, you think of anything you've accomplished professionally, community-wise, if you listen to too much of the noise, you wouldn't have gotten there. So there are life lessons beyond the game. Photography from Emmy Rose Photography, Black female photographer. And I did an insert on the Negro Southern Leagues Museum based in Birmingham, because at the time it was leading up to the centennial celebration of the Negro Leagues. And a lot of people got a little bit of an introduction if they saw the film 42 with the late Chadwick Boseman playing Jackie Robinson. But there's a deep, rich history and connectivity. And you think about it, baseball was probably the first major sport where you had the biggest breakthrough of African-American players. Even with the HBCU connects, for a number of HBCUs, that was their first intercollegiate sport. So there's a lot, for lack of a term, there's a lot of Black history with the game that we're neglecting, truth be told. Now, we know that there's other disconnects, but if they see it, and you put it out there constructively, and even one of the teams that I cover, the Birmingham Barons, a lot of people don't realize they get their name from the Negro League team, the Black Barons. And the Negro Southern Leagues Museum is right on the same block as the ballpark. And then for folks in Chicago, that's the AA affiliate. So 2 levels below the Major League Chicago White Sox. Tim Anderson, the White Sox starting shortstop, that's where he played. Nick Madrigal, who's the starting second baseman for the White Sox, that's where he played. And many people remember when Michael Jordan retired from basketball, that's where he played. So there's a lot of history and tie-ins, and whether you're a fan of the game or not, there's some type of takeaway from the life lessons to the historical component to even the fact that bigger picture, there is a need for Black folk, and I'll take it a step further, for Black women to be in these spaces and places. Like when I was doing the coverage, I'm the only African-American male doing pregame interviews in the press box when we were allowed to, in the camera pits, other than the cameramen. And like I said, one of the contributors, Emmy Rose Photography, Black female. So there's a need for us in these spaces, and it might not be easy, but what thing that is worth it is ever that easy? And yeah.
So thank you for going there. I mean, a trendsetter, innovator. Should I add that to the list? I'll put that on there too. It keeps growing.
I'll receive those in the spirit in which it's given. I'm just trying to do what I can with the talents that I've discovered, and hopefully, as I continue with my path, hopefully there's more talents that I'm able to uncover and put to better use. Seriously.
Awesome. Well, as a member of my Facebook community, which I adore, and I'm so glad that you are a member of the community, I always ask, are you blue? And blue meaning, are you bold, loving, unapologetic, and evolving? And I always ask, which one are you? So out of those words, which represents author Andrew Snorton, who is also an advisor, speaker, teacher, host, author, and trendsetter.
I'm going to say evolving, and it comes back to one of the statements that I made earlier. You do have to pause and take inventory of what you've accomplished, because it's very easy to forget what you've been able to do. So you do have to pause, like they say, pause and smell the roses. And you do have to, sometimes you do have to pat yourself on the back, and you do have to be arguably your biggest cheerleader. But you know that where you are isn't where you're always going to be. And if this is as far as you go, it's an insult to the talents that you have, and it's an insult to the people who still need to hear your voice. So I say evolving because, like you mentioned earlier, I've done poetry. Will I do another poetry book? Probably. I've done the pieces regarding self-image, self-encouragement, self-empowerment. Will I do something else along those lines? Absolutely. Will I do something sports related? Will it still be baseball? Will it be another sport? Stay tuned. But you have to continue. When you continue to evolve, it just helps you grow. It helps you connect with a wider universe of people who need to hear it from you. And I'll say this to anybody in your community or what have you. It's not to say that people haven't heard a certain story, but they need to hear it from you in order for it to really hit home. So if you don't do it, you're denying people who need to hear from you.
Well, I think that this interview has been a home run. Try. I mean, you never know. I am so grateful for you coming. I am wondering, do you think that young Andrew will be proud of older Andrew?
With young Andrew, now you're talking about the younger version of me, or like
yes.
my dad's name is Andrew, so technically I'm still young.
Yes, the younger 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 4-year-old Andrew, would he be proud of you?
I think, you know what, he would be proud because I didn't see this coming. I think it's one of those, you know how you hear what you're doing is preparing you for what's next, but sometimes you don't always see what's next. And I think the younger version of me would be like, for you not having a clue of what was next, you're doing a pretty good job. Maybe you should open your eyes and you'll have a better sense of direction. I would say, you probably say something like that, which would be like, you're doing all right. You're doing all right, but you can do a little bit better. And that ties in with the whole evolving piece. As good as we are at what we do, and this is whatever, writing and whatever, as good as we are at what we do, we can still do some things just a little bit better. And in doing that, we can reach just a few more people. And you never know, like I said before, someone needs to hear it from you because it will resonate better coming from you.
Wow, I really was hoping that, I was going to be able to keep it like you. You're so good. It shows are like 15 minutes and you hit it. And I just could talk to you forever. So I'm glad that you came and you decided to share with us today. If you could just hold the books up one more time and just tell us the titles. And I think we'll let this come to a close. So tell us about the titles. Again.
Okay, so again, the first book, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. This is the poetry-based book that we talked about at the beginning. The second book is 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1. That's the interfaith conversation to self-encouragement, empowerment, helping people, especially if they're dealing with something. And then the third book is Nothing Minor, which takes an intimate look at minor league baseball for fans at all levels. So if you're an advanced fan, there's enough stats. But if you're like, I don't have a clue, it speaks with you. So just trying to keep it as balanced as possible.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I will see you on the other side in our community, right?
Definitely. And thank you once again for the opportunity to everybody in the community. Seriously, best wishes, continued encouragement. And if you haven't gotten started, get started. Seriously.
Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, y'all.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to like comment, subscribe, and share. Bye-bye.